Well, good morning for another Daily Thunder. I'm on the Sea of Galilee and it is an absolutely beautiful morning. Well, for today's Daily Thunder, we're actually going to go to a beach on the north shore of the Sea of Galilee called Tabgha. And it's interesting that this would be the shore where Jesus called his disciples, that great statement of, hey, follow me and I will make you fishers of men. So I had asked a good friend of mine from Canada, LaRay Dueck, if he would give one of the messages here at the Sea of Galilee, and so he chose Tabgha. And so you're actually going to be listening, not to me this morning, but you're going to be listening to my good friend LaRay talk about this idea of Jesus calling his disciples from this location called Tabgha. So without further ado, here's LaRay Dueck.
Sea of Galilee. All right, so I'm going to go through a couple stories, a couple events that happened in Jesus' life. And we're kind of going to follow him and Peter through both of these stories. So let's go. So it would have been after Jesus gets baptized, right? We went to the spot in Jordan, or on the Jordan River, where Jesus gets baptized. It's kind of the start of his ministry. And then he goes back to the wilderness behind Jericho there that we saw. I'm guessing that'd been a few days' journey, and he's there for 40 days or so. Actually, at the Jordan River, he meets Peter's brother, and actually Peter as well at that time, and that's where Jesus gives Peter his name, from Simon to Peter. And so they have their first encounter at that point. They're at the Jordan River, some month or two, or over a month from when Jesus comes to this area again. So after he's through the wilderness, Jesus comes, and I'm sure he walks down this way. I that's what it feels like. I don't know about you guys. It feels like he'd come from this direction. And he sees Peter and Peter and Andrew in their father's fishing boat. I'm guessing it was a couple hundred meters or a couple hundred yards into the lake. And so I'm guessing he had to shout, which I never really thought of. But let's just read some of these, this passage here. I grab it. Where did it go here? Okay, and Jesus, walking by the Sea of Galilee, saw two brothers, Simon called Peter, and Andrew his brother. They were casting a net into the sea. So they were out there somewhere, casting their net into the sea with their father. For they were fishermen. This is who Peter and Andrew were. They were, if you were to identify them as like who they are to their bone, they were fishermen. That's what they knew. Like Dan was talking about, wherever Dan is. This clearly was a place where fishermen live, and that's kind of the reason for all the settlements around here. So they were fishermen, not the brightest in the culture. Not the ones that people esteemed the highest, but there they were, fishermen. It's what they had known. And Jesus said to them, he must have shouted it, he must have called out, and said a simple phrase, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." So, I guess a couple things that stick out to me just from that call is that there's kind of two parts to it, obviously. The part to the disciples, the part to Peter, saying, "Follow me." That's your part. Listen, what I want you to do, I want you to come out of your boat, I want you to follow me. It's kind of vague, but that's what I want you to focus on. That's what I want to be the atmosphere, the ambiance of your mind, is you follow me. Whatever that means, you follow me. And then Jesus goes on to say, "And I will make you." So this is Jesus' part. This is God's part. So God's going to do something. What I want you to do, Peter, is to follow me. And what's going to happen as a result? I'm going to make you a fisher of men. I never really read the passage that way until a few months ago. It's so easy to try and become what God wants us to be, like become the end result, or God's end design. But Jesus' promise here, first of all, Jesus' part is that he's going to make them into fishers of men. And it's a promise too, that God's actually going to be the one that does it. As they're following Jesus, they hop out of the boat. Says they immediately came out of their boat. They'd probably been thinking about it for the past month or two. You know, they had met this guy who, at least Andrew was convinced, was the Messiah, was the one that they were waiting for as in the Jewish culture. So I'm sure they'd been thinking, maybe they were talking about it as they were in the boat there. And so they hop out right away, come and follow Jesus. They didn't know what was ahead. I don't know what the atmosphere would have been like, but I'm sure it was just excitement. Like, you don't know what's around the bend for Peter and Andrew, but you know, they get to follow Jesus. What an honor that is to follow Jesus. Like, just think about that. God, the Messiah, is asking them to follow him. Like, what a privilege. It kind of makes sense why they'd hop out so quickly. So that was Jesus' initial call there. Follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. And so later on, it says on the same beach that there were a couple other brothers in their boats, and he asked them to follow him. And so they you know, have all sorts of adventures, all sorts of things happen in those 3 years that you know, we've all read lots of stories about. You know, some incredible things that they see Jesus has done. You know, like's been mentioned, they go over to that side of the mountains. They're preaching all along this coast and going down to Jerusalem. So all these incredible things have happened, and eventually, you know, as we know, Jesus, his path, his journey, I guess what him following his Father led him to Jerusalem, where he was crucified and all that stuff. And disciples, Peter's watching all this, you know, unfold, and so he dies, and so there's those few days there where they haven't met Jesus, and you know, they're just kind of going about their business. I mean, you know, I'm not sure what I would do in that situation. Someone you've poured your heart into for the last 3 years, and just has completely revolutionized your life. You were a fisherman, and you probably haven't done much fishing in the last 3 years. And so Peter decides, you know, what do I know? Let's go fishing, guys. I want to go fishing. And so he goes fishing, probably in the same place. And that's where we'll pick up the second story here. Let's read a few more verses from John 21. And after all these things, Jesus showed himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias. City of Tiberias right there, so Sea of Galilee. And in this way he showed himself. Simon Peter, Thomas called the twin, Nathanael of Cana, a few of these disciples, they were together. And Simon Peter said to them, I'm going fishing. You see his personality. It's time. I'm going fishing. Don't know what to do. Let's go fishing. And the rest of them said, yeah, we're going with you. And they went out and got into the boat, and they caught nothing. And then morning had come. So they must have been out in the boat all night. That's great. That's a long night of not catching any fish. But when morning had come, Jesus came and stood on the shore. So Jesus is here now. Maybe in the same spot. Who knows? Of that first calling to follow me. But the disciples didn't know that it was Jesus. And then Jesus said to them, he must have called out, he must have had a strong voice. Children, do you have any food? No, they said. And he said to them, cast your net on the other side, and you will find some. And as we know, they cast on the other side, and it's full of fish. They're excited. They find, oh goodness, this is Jesus. And Peter gets all super pumped, puts on his shirt, and just dives into the sea, and comes, swims, walks, however he can to see Jesus. I'm sure he embraces, and it's like this awesome reunion. You know, maybe on the same beach. Isn't that crazy? It might have been on the same beach as he first called him. And so they have dinner. Jesus has a fire going, and and he invites them to come and participate, and they have a meal together. I'm sure they laugh, they tell some stories. And Jesus pulls Peter aside for a while. And he talks about, we ask Peter the questions, do you love me? We've all heard it before. And Peter responds, 3 times, just like Jesus asked 3 times, do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? And Peter's, yeah, I do. And at the end, he's like, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. I think we know it's probably hearkening to when Peter denied Jesus those 3 times, and you gotta think that Peter had this thought. They're having a good time on the Sea of Galilee, just like I'm sure the disciples did. So you gotta think in the back of Peter's mind or something that, oh goodness, I've done this terrible thing. I've forsaken God. I've forsaken Jesus. What's his response going to be? And it's so gentle in this whole passage where Jesus is kind of drawing something out and really calling Peter, kind of shedding light on what his future is going to hold. And these next few verses, I'll just read them. They're great. So after Jesus gives the commission to Peter to feed his sheep, this is what Jesus says. Most assuredly I say to you, when you were young, you girded yourself and walked where you wanted to, walked where you wished. He has Peter off to the side somewhere, and he says, listen, when you were young, you did what you wanted, kind of. You went where you wanted, and there was no hindrance to you. But when you're old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will lead you this way and that. Another one will tell you where to go. Will lead you where you do not want to go, actually, is what it says. So he's telling of some time in the future when, he's not going to just have this free, enjoyable life where he's going where he wants to and can kind of choose his destinations here and there. There's going to be a time in the future where his road is really hard. This call to follow Jesus is not going to look pretty. It's not going to be easy. There's going to be a time when he's going to be led where he doesn't want to go. And John is the one who's writing this. Says he's signifying the way that Peter would die. So Jesus is giving him a little bit of a note of, what it's going to look like to follow him in the future. And so Peter hears this tough news, and as I'm sure a lot of us would have the instinct to do, he looks around, and he sees the group of disciples, he sees his good friend John. I'm sure he would have been great friends with John for years growing up. Their fathers were both fishermen. I'm sure they helped each other with their nets, and had competition to see who would catch the most fish. And so he looks over to John and asks Jesus, well, what about this man? Like, will he have to go through that tough thing? And then Jesus, his words are just so convicting, so good for the soul to hear. And I think that we can hear them for our own lives as well. And he asks the question, well, what is it to you? What does it matter to you if John has an easier road? What is it to you? You follow me. That's the way he ends that. So in the same spot where he initially called Peter and a few other disciples, follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. 3 years later, they're here. After having 3 years of memories with Jesus, and Jesus telling Peter the difficult road he's going to go down to glorify God, to glorify Jesus. He's like, you know what? My calling to you hasn't changed. That's the incredible thing about God. The stuff that happened in Mount Carmel and the stuff that happened in the wilderness there that we went through, it's not some sideshow that God's doing. It's not like a little mission here, a little mission there. God has one big calling, one big purpose that he's accomplishing, that he's fulfilling, that he's making, he's orchestrating. And even in the micro version of Peter's life, it's like, what was true before, follow me, the call to follow me before, same now. You follow me right here, right now, no matter what another person's road is, no matter how hard it is, you follow me. I want to hear that, man. I want to hear that preached at my soul all the time. And it's not like just some commission that he sends us off to, but it's a following Jesus. So Jesus is there too, right? It's not something he's sending us off to do. He's asking us to follow him, and so to go with him, and that's what makes the following so, I guess, exciting. And the best part about it is that you're going with Jesus. So that's my exhortation to you guys, and just a great meditation. Follow Jesus. Follow him wherever the road leads, and that's crazy that all that happened right here.